Well, hey everybody, this is Perch. I've got my on deathbed voice going on again, but that's just the way it goes. Or it's smoky, pure sex. That's depending on your point of view. Like for example, if you have no taste, it's that second. Anyway, this is a long ass email, and I don't say that as a knock against the person who wrote it, but it's still very long. So I'm probably going to truncate this a little bit for reading, or we'd spend 15 minutes just reading email. But anyway, let's do it. Hey, Perch, been a fan of yours for a long time. Enjoy listening to your takes on the business side of the comic book industry. One thing you have mentioned a lot in your videos is that any profit or loss from Marvel Comics is considered peanuts to Disney. They don't really care about sales being flat because it is so small and have no financial incentive to rein in bad actors. There's truth to that, but there's a lot of nuance to that. And I'll give you a little bit of it right now before we get into the counterpoint, or actually agreement. It's not that they don't care about the money. It's that with money, especially in a big corporation, there's this metric called, is it worth enough money for me to go to a lot of trouble? Which is different from saying I don't care. So in general, Disney wants to see the Marvels turning a profit, which is why you see them doing variant covers and other bullshit, because it artificially spikes the numbers and it helps their monthly comics come in, fairly smooth. And you will notice when they don't have a big relaunch or big number one to push in a month, suddenly they commission more variants and other things, so the numbers kind of smooth out a little bit. I got into a big argument with former fairly senior Marvel guy about this, but I don't know what to tell you. When you look at the numbers, that's what you see. And if this happened just, coincidentally, for a couple months, you could chalk it up to, well, that's just, correlation does not equal causation. But when you look at like 6 years worth of data that paints the exact same picture, then yeah, that's what it tells us. So I don't know. But the other part of it is that, in addition to, it just being small, it's we talk about bad behavior from people. Well, most of the people doing the bad behavior are contractors. And so to really get in there and police their language opens yourself, meaning the big company, up to a lot of nonsense. The smarter thing to do is just, ignore it until you can't anymore, and then just quietly don't give the person additional work. But if you get in there and say, hey, we don't like this, we don't like that, and you send any kind of formal message. And by the way, there have been plenty of editors that have called up writers and said, I really wish you'd shut the fuck up and not say stuff like that. But you have to just be very careful before you do it. Because if you send something formal to a contractor, to somebody who's not actually an employee, then it starts to lay groundwork for things like, well, you're treating me like an employee, therefore you need to pay me health insurance, give me stock. And so and Disney is a master at understanding this line. So just for what it's worth, and I could go into that in a video another time if somebody wants me to, get in the comments if you'd like it. But there's a dynamic to how you're supposed to treat and handle contractors versus full-time employees. And if you screw that up, it can open yourself up to a lot. And it can be retroactive. So anyway, well, there's a lot of guidance there. I'm giving you the bird's eye view of it. Please don't go and take what I just said and this is the gospel according to Perch. No, there's still a lot of nuance to it. But anyway, we'll go back to it. He says, instinctively, that made sense to me since Disney is some giant entity, but I didn't have a sense of just how small it really was. I happen to be a CPA, so the other day I figured I'd actually pull up the 10K for Disney and see for myself. I think you actually undersell just how minuscule Marvel is for Disney. I thought I'd share the info as I looked, and maybe they'll help your other fans get a sense of the scale. First thing I noticed is that I was not going to get any actual Marvel comic information from this report. In a 128-page report where they give all the important information to the investors, the word comic shows up 6 times total and the word Marvel 10 times in mostly non-comic related context, usually licensing. Not a good start. So I had to piece together some numbers about comics from other sources. As you have mentioned, industry data is hard to come by, but I'm using ICB2 2022 data for some ballpark estimates. Definitely not perfect, but just to get a sense of size. 2022's report showed the whole industry is about $2 billion. And for Marvel, I'll generously say a ballpark 500 million of comic book revenue to Marvel as a nice round number. Also, this is just revenue, not profit. And it's nowhere close to that number, by the way. Let's compare this to Disney's revenue as a whole. In 2023, they had 89 billion of revenue. So 500 million compared to 889 billion. That is 0.5% of total revenue. Not 5%, 0.5%, less than 1%. So the comic industry is not driving the success or failure for Disney as a whole. Where does all Disney's revenue come from? Well, what areas bring in the most money and therefore get the attention and scrutiny to the management investors? The financials list three core business segments: entertainment, i.e. the movies; sports, so entertainment 40 billion, sports 17 billion, experiences, theme parks, 32 billion. Entertainment includes traditional TV networks, ABC, A&E, Disney Channel, FX, Fox, Lifetime, History, direct-to-consumer streaming, Disney Plus, Hulu, content sales, and licensing. That's important to note. TV shows and movies, both Disney-produced and third-party licenses. Sports is mostly ESPN, and there's stakes in other arenas and things. Experiences are theme parks, resorts, cruise ships, merchandise licensing, merch licensing, and retail. That 500 million from comics is just one small part of this last and smallest segment. These are all diverse operating businesses that bring in way, way more money than comic books. The smart decision is a ton of effort. Let's say they could triple the revenue from comics to 1.5 billion. This is still so far down the list of priorities of revenue generating items for Disney. For example, Disney Plus and Hulu had subscription fee increases and subscriber numbers increased from 22 to 23. That generated about 2 billion in extra revenue. That 1 year increase is 4x the entire comic sales revenue, which again is not profit. That segment is still operating at a huge loss, 2.5 billion of loss to be exact. Those numbers are getting way more attention than comics. TV and movies is only about 9 billion out of 89 billion, and the operating at a loss of 180 million. Disappointing movie like The Marvels, $270 million budget and nowhere near break even, on its own is more concerning than anything in the comic industry. Comics could operate the same way and do pulp every single issue they print, and they'd probably still be more concerned about the success of the single blockbuster movie. And for what it's worth, as they should be. Again, this is not about love for comics. What we're talking about now in this video, in this mail, is about money. Money and profits. And what there's a famous quote, money don't give a shit about your feelings. And that's definitely where we are here. We'll finish up the mail. At the end of the day, those numbers show Disney likely doesn't care much about what happens to the quality of comics because there is no financial incentive to care. But as fans, we still care based on our emotional connections, characters, and stories. We point out that disconnects where a lot of the frustration comes from, but I didn't understand how divergent those interests really were. So, good analysis, and thank you. I appreciate that. I won't add too much to it. I think the mail kind of stands on its own and is super helpful to just, learn from. But it is, I think a couple things there. It doesn't mean the comic books are not important or not relevant, but it does put some perspective about where things are at. And that means that, if you are Disney, you're going to care about where the big bleed of money is. You're not going to care about some of the other stuff. It also means that things that are going to annoy you more than profit are bad publicity. So, for example, Chuck Wendig doing his tweets about the Trump voters could all eat a piece of shit was a line too far because he had name, he had notoriety, he had stuff outside of his work or non-work for Marvel. And so therefore, they're going to come down hard on me. It makes sense. That just is how it goes. But, take some heart, because the reality is it doesn't mean that they're never going to care. It doesn't mean that we're forever destined to just kind of be screwed where comics are concerned. What it means is that, they've got to find an incentive for this to matter. And one of the things Disney does do from time to time is they spin out parts of their businesses to operate more independently. And typically they do that where they get tired of the minutia of having this thing being a rounding error, and they basically say, you're going to have to live on your own. You're going to have to profit or fail, without our backup. It's too annoying for us. That's kind of where I think Marvel's going to go. It's going to get to a place where it's just it's a nuisance. It's not anything that they're going to panic or care about, but it is something that they are, they're just going to have to stop caring about the same level. They're going to have to stop throwing resources and things at it. That's where this winds up. That's where the story ends. Anyway, thank you very much for the analysis in the mail. Pretty awesome. Really appreciate it. I think that's helpful for people. And yeah, it gives you a sense of perspective of where this stuff's at and why some of these problems linger. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for listening.